Joe La Bianca, Colossians 4:10. Don't turn it off when you hear the verse. It sounds weird, sounds boring, sounds, what does this have to do with me? Just listen, we'll learn a lesson. Now here's the verse, 4:10. Aristarchus, my fellow prisoner, saluteth you, and Marcus, sister's son to Barnabas, toucheth whom ye receiveth commandments. If he come unto you, receive him. All right, that's a little confusing, and I'm going to explain. Aristarchus was all over the place with Paul, and a well-known friend and co-worker, now in prison together with Paul, and both executed by Nero. They called him the Bulldog. Probably one of the worst leaders the world has ever known. I can talk about him for a while. Put it this way, he used Christians to light up his parties, put them on poles and put tar on them. Aristarchus was a Greek. His name meant best ruler. It was not a Christian name, and he never changed it. I'm afraid that religion likes to speak against names if they're not Christian names, quote unquote. Well, tell Paul to stop saying Aristarchus then. Now, John Mark is back with Paul after he left him during one of Paul's missionary journeys to go back to Jerusalem and that half-law, half-grace lifestyle. He became a leader there. Barnabas, John Mark's uncle, had such a sharp dispute with Paul that they parted company. Now the book of Acts follows Paul after this dispute, and Barnabas has no more mention. This shows who is right. You see, John Mark was wavering between law and grace. John Mark was Barnabas' nephew. And Paul didn't trust him at this time during this missionary trip. See, it has to do with, someone said, the if-then theology. If-then theology. If you do this, then God will do that. That's hogwash. We must believe the because, therefore, gospel. Because we believe Jesus died for our sins and rose from the dead, therefore we receive all things from God. Do you see the difference? The if-then theology is taking over Christianity, but we must hold on to the because, therefore. Cause and effect. Now, the last half of this verse is very confusing, where it says, touching whom ye received commandments. See, John Mark needed to be treated a certain way. You see, this means John Mark was to be treated differently because of his great insecurity. The Colossians were to make him feel welcome, another translation says. Maybe the memory of this great dispute lingered in Mark's mind, causing him to feel unaccepted among the brothers. I could feel Mark's pain. I had a great dispute with the leader of a church, and the whole church treated me with extra love to make me feel accepted. Even the person I had the dispute with. Many from this church still do treat me with great love. You see, I said what I believed was true, and I still believe it's true, but I say it in my New York way, New York City way, which is what I am, and I get in trouble for it sometimes. I can't become someone else. I mean, when I moved from New York to New Jersey, they sent me to speech class because they wanted me to talk like a New Jerseyite, which is nothing wrong with their accent, but I don't see how it's any much better than New York. I mean, really. Anyway, my speech teacher was Mr. Cipoletti, and I went to class for weeks and weeks, and when I was done, he came out talking like me. I mean, he sounded like Bugs Bunny. Anyway, but as to what I said to this pastor, I was defending Paul's gospel, and this pastor was defending what I call Old Covenant Christianity. So we parted company too. Old Covenant Christianity is when you do not rightly divide the Holy Bible. There were life groups where if someone were to pick out a verse from the Old Testament and comment on it, they would applaud, as if the New Covenant was something less. But by calling it new, God has made the old obsolete. But for some reason, it wasn't perceived that way. Anyway, let's read the fight between Paul and Barnabas. Let's read it in Acts and find out why it happened in Acts 15:36-40. So, some days after, Paul said to Barnabas, remember, John Mark's uncle, "Let us go again and visit our brethren in every city where we have preached the word of the Lord, and see how they do." And Barnabas determined to take with them John, whose surname was Mark. But Paul thought not good to take him with them, who departed from them from Pamphylia, and went not with them to the work. Now that was in chapter 13, and it says he went back to Jerusalem, which speaks volumes. I'll get to that. And then it continues, verse 39. The contention between Paul and Barnabas was so sharp between them that they departed asunder from one another. Hey, these are two Christians on a missionary journey, spreading the gospel. And they had such a sharp dispute that they parted company. So Barnabas took Mark and sailed unto Cyprus. Now you got to know something about this. Cyprus was where Barnabas lived. It was his home. He went home. He gave up too. Listen to this, verse 40. And Paul chose Silas and departed, being recommended by the brethren unto the grace of God. And he went through Syria and Cilicia, confirming the churches. He continued with the work, recommended by the brethren and accepted by the church unto the grace of God. In Acts 13, John Mark deserts Paul for Jerusalem and its old covenant messianic ways, which was very, very wrong. After, in 15, Uncle Barnabas takes his nephew, John Mark, home to Cyprus, and Paul continues in God's work. It's so clear. But listen, John Mark came around and ended up as a great helper of Paul at the end of his life, and a son of Peter, intimating a very close relationship. John Mark made it back. We all mess up in life, but our lives are not over yet. And we will all come around like John Mark if we just continue to believe that Jesus died for us and rose from the dead. That's all. And that is enough. And God will bring us around, and nothing will separate us from his love, and he shall complete what he started. But just do not forget the simple gospel. I mean, does it get any happier? You might be down and low and deserted and sad, but you'll come full circle. Just stick with Jesus. Thank you.